Well, hello and welcome to another edition of the E-Commerce Evolution Podcast. I'm your host, Brett Curry, CEO of OMG Commerce. And today we're talking about how to find the areas of opportunity, the areas that you should be focusing on for conversion rate optimization. This episode of the E-Commerce Evolution Podcast is brought to you by OMG Commerce. And we are thrilled to underwrite this program and bring some amazing guests to you. I have a question for you. How is your YouTube game? Are you using YouTube to help scale your e-commerce business? Hopefully, you're using YouTube both as a remarketing vehicle and also for top-of-funnel growth. However, if you're like most e-commerce companies, then you're probably not fully leveraging YouTube. So, I have two free resources for you. The first is a 2-minute crash course on YouTube ads. I recorded this with the famous Ezra Firestone. So you can check that out by looking at the links in the show notes to this show. You can also Google Smart Marketer and 2-minute crash course, and you'll find the resource there. Also, we recorded a 90-minute webinar outlining exactly how we scale with YouTube. We talk about keys to a great YouTube ad. We talk about audience targeting. We talk about bidding, optimization, and much, much more. So I highly, highly recommend you check it out. You can also find that linked here in the show notes. It's also at the bottom of the 2-minute crash course page. So check them out and start scaling with YouTube. And now, back to the show. My guest is wildly famous in our circles and in the e-commerce world. He is the founder of Ethercycle. He's the host of the amazing podcast, which is about to hit a huge milestone, which we'll talk about in a minute, the Unofficial Shopify Podcast. He's the author of the Ecommerce Bootcamp, and he's just a legend in the e-commerce space. So I'm excited to welcome to the show my friend, Kurt Elster. Kurt, what's up, man? Welcome to the show, and thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for the phenomenal intro.
Yeah, dude. So love your podcast. Obviously been a guest on the podcast. I listen to the podcast. It's how I stay up to date on all things Shopify, which is really important. But you guys are about to hit a milestone. So if you would talk about the milestone, but then also when did you start the podcast? How long has that been going?
I started the podcast about 4 years ago, and the first month was like 150 downloads, and the next month was like 400 downloads. And 4 years later, in May, next month, we will hit 1 million downloads.
1 million downloads. Yeah. That's phenomenal. Congrats to you guys.
Thank you.
Just as a person who also hosts a podcast, I know the work that goes into it, and you guys have just done phenomenally well from guest selection to just the content. It's all good, man. And it sounds like you're not losing your passion or your joy for hosting the podcast. We're going to keep it going.
I always feel like we have only just figured it out. Every time I do the show, I'm like, okay, this time I figured it out.
Yep.
So it's a learning process. And the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know.
It's so true.
I don't know, if anyone's considering doing a podcast, now's the time. Just do it.
I totally agree. Even if it doesn't become a smashing success, even if it doesn't become, a chart topper, even if it's not the next Unofficial Shopify podcast, you'll learn a lot. You'll grow from it. You'll connect with people that will be amazing. So yeah.
And that's what's cool about it.
Absolutely.
It's a networking Trojan horse, because suddenly any interesting person you want to talk to one-on-one for 30 minutes, you have a thing of value to offer them.
You can do it. Yeah. Which is so true, because otherwise if you're just like, hey, I think you're really interesting. Can I just chat with you and ask you questions for 30 minutes? That's not very appealing. But if you say, hey, you come on my podcast, most people want to do that, which is great. So I will say you do have a phenomenal setup, and we're recording this where we got video going. So if you want to check this out, go to the YouTube channel for E-Commerce Evolution. You can see it. But talk about your setup, dude. You that just shows that you are on your A game when it comes to podcasting.
Yeah. So this is video, and I wanted to treat things like a set, like a stage when you're in a video call, recording a webinar, screencast, whatever. So for $90 off Amazon, I got a ton of acoustic foam panels. So the wall behind me is all acoustic foam. I've got a 20-year-old Lazy Boy executive leather chair that is the coolest looking thing.
It is so
some
cool.
super villain stuff. Had to set up
huge. It's leather. It is. It gives you instant cred. For sure.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you got to have the big chair, the big high back chair. And then I did some fancy lighting. So there's like a studio light on me. And then there's like I've got a bias light behind the chair to make it pop off the background. It's very sunny today, so the effect is not quite as good.
Got it.
And then for sound, I got the Shure SM7B mic. This is what Michael Jackson recorded Thriller with.
No way.
It's what Joe Rogan uses. A lot of people. And then I run that through a processor, so it like sets levels live. It does a little bit of equalization. It has a noise gate, so when I'm not talking, it mutes the mic, which is really cool. Obviously, that's like recording your own podcast. You do that stuff in post. But when you're doing a screencast, a webinar, you're on someone else's, or just doing a video conference, you're still getting that broadcast sound.
Yeah, we just went highly technical and a little bit nerdy on the podcast, and I love it. But check it out; the setup is cool. I'm a road.
It looks cool.
Guy. It looks very cool. Yeah, exactly.
But we just told people, hey, you should start a podcast, and then rattled off like $2,000 worth of equipment. I'll tell you right now, when I started it, I had a $30 microphone, and never once has someone left a review that was like, the sound quality sucks. Never once has someone. I've got a few reviews that said I suck. And never once have I gotten an email that's like, the sound quality sucks. So I'll tell you, good sound quality doesn't hurt. Bad sound quality doesn't help, but it's nowhere near as big a deal as you might think.
Yep. Content, personality, all that really matters. Grow into the equipment and stuff to make you a rock star on Kurt's level.
I just wanted to geek out. That's why I've got the gear.
Yes, I love it, dude. I'm right there with you on enjoying the geeking out process. So I want to get into this topic that you're very intimately familiar with, and that's conversion rate optimization, and more specifically, where do we start? How do we know what to optimize, what not to optimize? But I know one of the things that's kind of a hot topic that's on everyone's mind, or a lot of people's mind who are on Shopify and who use MailChimp, is the fact that they just broke up. They're in the process of a divorce.
Mom and dad are getting a divorce. This time it's serious.
Yeah. So Shopify and MailChimp's parting ways.
And there are 300,000 kids. 300,000 Shopify merchants use MailChimp.
What about the kids, guys? Do it for the kids. Work it out.
Yeah, come on. So back in November, they had a dust up and they settled it. This time it's not getting settled. If you are on Shopify, or if you're on Shopify and you're using MailChimp, and you can no longer install the MailChimp integration. If you already have it installed, you get to keep it only until May 12th. May 12th, it will cease to work. And then that's the end of it. The long and the short of it is Shopify made a change to their privacy policy, their terms of service for Shopify partners. And they said, hey, here's a list of customer information. It was basic stuff like last name, first name, email, and most importantly, if they had or had not opted in and out of marketing, and like timestamp. And they said, you got to sync that stuff back to Shopify if you collect that, which it was so they could be compliant with privacy. MailChimp, Shopify did a poor job of communicating what those requirements were. And MailChimp seized on that opportunity to say, hey, we're protecting your privacy by refusing to work with Shopify, even though we rode that wave for 4 or 5 years. And so now they're going their separate ways. They're not working it out. And so if you're one of those 300,000 merchants, you got two options. You could do nothing. Well, a few options. All right, you could always do nothing. Atomic option is switch to a different e-commerce platform. Please don't. You make yourself crazy.
Yeah.
Or
that's insane.
You could try and replace the MailChimp integration. There's the two best apps to do that are ShopSync, seems to be the winner. People like ShopSync a lot. I like Zapier a lot. That one's probably more fiddly. ShopSync's easier. So that's one option. Or use this as an opportunity to look at other e-commerce CRMs, email softwares, and ESPs. Switch away from MailChimp. So Klaviyo.
Consider Klaviyo, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Klaviyo is probably what you want.
The gold standard.
If you want to go super easy, Conversio. If you're like, listen, I just want to set it and forget it, Conversio could be good. If you want to get really, really fiddly, Drip can be good. And if you're like, I need to be the most enterprisey enterprise, Bronto. Like there's, having said that,
so many options. Yeah. If you want to keep it like, hey, right. But if you look at, hey, what integrates really beautifully with Shopify? What's advanced and will do likely everything you need. And it's not super cheap, but something like Klaviyo I think is great. It's not as expensive as maybe a Bronto or something.
Klaviyo.
Yep,
I love it.
Totally,
oh my God.
Totally. It's phenomenal. So, I mean, for my opinion, like this is a lose. Like Shopify is not made better by this. MailChimp is certainly not made better by this. I don't know. I don't get it. But hey, that's the way life and business
Well, the
goes.
suspicion, what seems to be the case is that MailChimp is going to roll out an e-commerce solution. And this is part of a larger business strategy where anytime a company says, listen, we're just really concerned, we're going to sacrifice because we're so concerned about our users' privacy, they're probably fucking lying to you.
Yeah. There's something in the flank that they've got planned and they're about to unveil that. But for now, it's just we're all concerned about your privacy.
Yes.
I would totally agree with you in that. That makes sense. So it'll be interesting to watch and see how that plays out for sure. So awesome. Well, appreciate that. Appreciate that insight. I know you're the man in the know when it comes to all things Shopify. So good to get that insight. So let's transition. Let's talk about conversion rate optimization. There's so many things we can do here. There's so many areas we could focus on. If we say, hey, I want to improve my conversion rate, and I know that if I do improve my conversion rate, all my paid traffic opportunities work better. My organic traffic is better. Just everything changes. The math changes in my business if I can improve my conversion rate. But I think the real question, there's a lot of podcasts talking about tips and tricks and things to do to improve your conversion rate. But what about discussing where do you start? Where do you begin? What do you change first? So let's dive into that because I know that this is kind of where you live and what you do. But how does someone start and how do they identify the areas of their shopping journey that need to be tested and potentially tweaked?
Okay. I'm glad you asked. So that's what we're talking about today. Yes. The thing that people often jump to is one of two things. They either say, hey, let's split test. Well, unless you have a ton of traffic and a ton of purchases so that you could quickly get statistically significant results and you're really well versed in it, you're not going to go anywhere fast with split testing. Split testing is literally the last thing I would ever consider because it's like, do you have everything else nailed? Okay, now we could go to split testing, which is really a game of let's start throwing stuff against the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah. When you say you have to have a good amount of traffic so you can get to statistical significance, benchmarks there, like what kind of traffic are we talking about? Do you need to be at before split testing even makes sense?
Well, so really it's by purchase. And I think you probably want to be getting like 40 orders a day before you could really take good advantage of this.
Makes sense.
So the counterintuitive approach is I would start with the customers and I would start with a customer survey. I didn't even, when we got into conversion rate optimization, I didn't even start with surveys. This is the thing I've recently started doing because I had seen the incredible impact that improving copy and messaging and objection busting language based on surveys had on our client sites. Like consistently, it felt like surveys and copy and the resulting copywriting had outsized impacts. So I'll give you an example of why this makes sense, why this is important. You only think you know why your customers are buying.
Yes.
I worked on a site called Chicago Brick Oven, and they sell brick ovens, and they're in Chicago, right? Makes sense. And
great name. Sounds very tasty as well.
Yes. And it's like those wood-fired, you want to make your own wood-fired pizza is basically what you'd buy one of these things for. And we would assume that if you bought one of these, you were a foodie, and that was your motivation. Not the case. If you go on the site now, and I'm sure those people are, but we interviewed people and we got some interesting answers, and they're like, I love that my family comes over on the weekends and we cook pizza in the backyard. And it basically was like a social thing.
A social thing. Makes sense.
We would not have guessed that at all, but it was. And so we revamped the site, and as part of it, we changed language. And on the homepage, the hero image has a headline. The headline is literally a direct quote from the survey. The oven and the pizza I cooked became the sensation of my small town.
Nice.
Holy shit. How are you going to do? It's basically like, I bought a pizza oven, now I'm the mayor.
Yep. But that hits on so many things. Like that goes right to the core of why someone wants a brick oven to cook wood-fired pizza. It's the social aspect. It's the renown they get. I'm kind of into barbecuing. I like to grill. And
okay, yeah, you get it.
we're building a big deck so we can have more people over and out on the deck. But it's all about the social aspect. Like,
yes.
If people were complimenting my burgers and stuff like that, that's the ultimate high when it comes to barbecuing, and so this is the same thing. And man, what a beautiful use of. I'm thinking of an old ad that goes something like that. I can't remember what it was for, but anyway, that totally makes sense. Now let's key in on that ultimate benefit. I'm buying the brick oven so that I can be the talk of the town, or that all my family wants to come over. It's the social aspect. That's beautiful. It's beautiful.
So,
but, you don't know that until you do the survey.
Yeah. At the top of the show, we discussed, hey, your audio, if you're making a podcast, the audio quality is much less important than the message.
Right.
And that's why for conversion rate optimization, I'm putting the message first before the user experience, because we could optimize this thing all day. If the messaging falls flat, it doesn't matter. The most beautiful site in the world is not going to sell well if it's just if the messaging is just soggy and limp.
Yep. We want tweaking the color of the checkout button, the add to cart button, changing it from orange to blue, maybe. But like look at the message first. That's the real winner.
And the survey itself, we've discovered, is a good opportunity for a quick sale email. So what we do is we make a landing page on the site with a survey form. You use whatever form builder you're comfortable with. I like Wufoo, just because it's what I've used. And then we segment everyone who made a purchase in the last 12 months, like one or more purchases. If you've got a ton of customers, you could try and segment it to just repeat purchasers to really narrow in on that like VIP cohort. It really depends on what you're comfortable with and the level of traffic you have. And so, but like, let's say, we just send an email, everyone who made a purchase in the last 12 months, and you say, hey, we need your help. We want to improve our brand. But to do that, we need your feedback. And if you do that, we'll happily send you a coupon. So then you set up the form, they fill out the questions, and at the end they get a coupon code. You like Shopify's shareable discount link, so they click it, it automatically applies. And you'll pay for the survey very rapidly this way.
So you're incentivizing people to fill out the survey. You're also paying for your time and effort and whatever to do the survey. Tips on, because I know that there's an art and a science to doing surveys. This is actually fun. I had no idea you were going to share this, but I love this idea. I started my marketing career basically in the year 2000, selling radio, and then did some stuff with small business. And so I've always been a believer. We used to do like paper surveys because the insight you get is so valuable. And then, of course, SurveyMonkey came along and all those things, and that revolutionized it. But there's an art and a science to asking questions, right? Yes. If you fail on the survey, this is where you probably need to get someone to help you. If you ask bad questions, you will get bad answers. Any tips on how to make the survey? How many questions? What do you ask? And I know we can't maybe dive into that too deep, but any tips on that?
So you want to keep it short. So you do 10 questions or less. The standard form we've come up with is 8 questions. You want to ask, we've got some radio button questions in there, but we have equally
radio
many.
Button meaning yes, no, or multiple choice, something like that.
Yeah, basically, yes, no, or multiple choice. And then we've got, but like none of them have a ton of things in there, ton of options. And then the rest, we ask open-ended questions. If you ask people open-ended questions, they will give you honest answers, especially if you phrase it the right way. And you generally want to phrase it as like the inverse of the direct question. So if I said, I want to know what my purchasers look like. I said, Brett, tell me about yourself. And Brett would be like, well, I'm a dad. I've got 3 kids. I'm an entrepreneur. It doesn't really help me. It's too like, that's Brett, but it doesn't work as a description for a customer avatar. Mm-hmm. So instead you say, what kind of person would benefit from Acme widgets? Okay. Now they're going to describe the avatar of themselves.
Yep.
So that's what I say, like take the inverse of an indirect question, or the inverse of a direct question.
Love that it. What kind of person would benefit from our ovens? Yeah. It's phenomenal.
So we could say, hey, have you recommended this product? Yes, no. And if they have, if they say no, we pop up a question, tell us why not. And usually it's just like, well, I haven't found anybody.
Yeah.
And if they say yes, then we go, how did you, to what kind of person would you recommend it?
Yeah.
And then that's, okay, now they're going to describe themselves. And then the follow-up question is, what kind of benefit would they get from it? And then they're going to tell you the primary benefit they got and why they bought it.
Dude,
so that's
awesome.
okay.
Brilliant.
That's where you start seeing people saying, stuff like, man, it's so I can have my family over and we can cook pizza, or we could, smoke sausage or whatever the heck. The thing that you had no idea was the actual benefit that people got, because it's often these very emotional reasons, and they may not even think about it until you ask that right way.
Tying it back to the emotional reason why someone buys is so powerful. And sometimes in the age of split testing and having data and KPIs for everything, we get too focused on the technical and the math, and we forget that it's the message, it's the emotion that leads someone to sell. And so when you can blend all of that, then you're a superhero. So, okay, love the survey idea. That's phenomenal. Did not expect that, and pleasantly surprised by that. So, okay, survey. What else? Right. What else should we use to identify where do we optimize?
The problem with that survey, we only heard from the people who bought. We still don't know the people who didn't buy. Why didn't they buy? And you might be thinking, well, how the heck am I going to get to them? The solution is you run an exit intent survey on your landing pages, your product pages. And I like Hotjar. Hotjar's basic plan is free. It's basically like a testing suite. And
Hotjar also has like heat maps and stuff like that.
Yes. Yeah. So it's got everything you want, and it starts at the beautiful price of $0. So there's no reason not to try this thing. And it's easy to use. And you could do a thing, you could do exit intent polls or surveys. So we ask one question. If someone, we look for, like, does the URL have /products in the title? Okay, we know they're on a product page then. And when they mouse out of that screen, we pop open a window with one question. It says, if you didn't make a purchase today, what stopped you? And now they're going to tell us their number one objection. Now, the catch with these things is most people won't answer, but you don't need that many to start to see a trend. And so if it's like, well, the price is too high. Okay, maybe you should offer financing. Maybe you need to better communicate the value. Or what you want to look for is, what are the objections that people had, and are like, that means 100% you did not do a good enough job of busting those objections. And maybe you already run live chat on your site, like start farming your live chat for those common questions. Great, and look for those objections. And put them into the site, like on the product page, in a way where it's obvious. And it ideally, once you implement it, you should see those similar complaints start to drop.
Yeah. The questions asked through the chat are just showing you where your communication is failing, right? Where is the site not answering someone's questions? And then that's what you need to go in and change. So that's beautiful as well. So look at live chat. Okay, so exit surveys. You recommend Hotjar. Phenomenal. Fantastic.
All right. So first one, we know why people, we use the survey. We know why people are shopping. We know the benefit they're getting. Ideally, we update our language on that. But this also helps us inform intent. Like, now we've got a much clearer picture of what the person is trying to get out of your website. So now when we go to the traditional, and this is like where I used to start with these things, with these website audits, is with heat maps. So we run...
which, by the way, just a quick side note, I hope I don't derail you, but this is just...
No, go ahead.
As you understand the intent and why someone is buying, that also influences what we do. Like, now I know maybe different keywords to target, or now I know maybe I can shift my targeting on YouTube just a little bit. Or now I say, I need to create a whole new YouTube video, a new ad, because of what we just found out in this survey. So,
and I've seen that happen.
What's that?
I've seen that happen where it like completely we're like, oh my God, there's an entire use case for this product that we had no idea. And it like has this common purchaser. So now we can make make new ad creative for that use case in person.
Totally makes sense. Okay, beautiful. So now you understand the intent. Now you're moving into the more traditional CRO tactics. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. So now we can run heat maps on the site. And what I want to look at, Hotjar, again, it'll do this. It'll generate a heat map, a movement map, which I don't find terribly useful. Heat map is what they click on. So we call it a click map more accurately, and a scroll map. And it'll let you break it down by device. So it'll give you one for phone and one for desktop, one for tablet. And really, like, unless you've got a ton of traffic and you're getting really fiddly, you probably don't even want to bother with the tablet one. You're going to be mostly looking at phone, the majority of people's traffic, and then desktop. So with this, with the heat map, you want to run it on whatever the top landing pages are for the site. So it's usually going to be like homepage, collection or category page, a best-selling product page, your cart, and maybe your checkout. And when you run through that heat map, what you want to look for is, number one, are there elements that people just don't interact with? If they even like people reading stuff, you could tell when they're reading stuff because they'll be like stray clicks where they highlighted text. So that could tell you like, so first I want to look through like, is there elements just got nothing at all? And if that's the case, can I get rid of it? If no one interacts with it, it means it's a distraction. So first, let's just clean it up. Let's just eliminate the stuff that they're not playing with. And second,
that means it's a distraction, probably improves speed and a number of other things if you eliminate that.
Yes. Yeah. There's rarely a disadvantage to getting rid of stuff that you don't need because it's tough. Like when you put the site together, everything you put on there was really a best guess. Once it's actually out there in the wild and we see how people use it, that's probably very different than how we imagined they were using it. Sorry, did we run through? So first I say, look for the stuff that no one interacted with. And if it's something you don't need, it's just like a link to our values and no one clicks that, okay, that can go away now. But maybe they clicked on our story. All right, well, why don't you just combine those two pages? Yeah, we could simplify it. The other thing you want to look for then is, so we got rid of that stuff. Now start looking for, is there things people are clicking on that don't do anything? Because that means that's some kind of confusion. So, hey, you could either try changing the design so they're not clicking on it anymore. But better yet, if we got an element that people are clicking on, that's more engagement and action on the site. Let's go ahead and make that clickable, as long as we've got a good idea of where we think it should go. Even running, like I ran it on my own site and I had this thing, an element on our site that's like brands we've worked with. People were clicking on the logos. Of course they were clicking on the logos and they went nowhere. So we went like, I'm like, oh sure, I got to go make case studies and then link it to that, right? Like this stuff happens to me too. So like that's, so you want to look for those misclicks. And then if like going through the site, it can, especially like a homepage, it can help determine order. Where, you know, like, man, there's this one element that people are clicking on. Like there's two elements that people interact with, but they're clicking on one way more than the others. All right, well, why don't we can rearrange the layout based on the order that people are clicking on these elements.
Bring the most click stuff up to the top.
Yeah.
So find something below the fold that an inordinate amount of people are clicking on, pull that up. And if there's something at the top of the page people aren't clicking on, push that down, that type of thing.
Yes. So we're basically like, we're using our background where we know kind of what their goals are based on the survey, and we know what like best-selling products are, and we know. So then once they're on the site, we're going to use what people do and don't interact with as a data point to determine what stays, what goes, and in what order it goes in. That's the advantage to the heat map.
How long do you run the heat map test typically to be able to say, okay, now we're getting a clear picture of these are the elements that matter, these elements that don't, this is what people are clicking on and what they're not clicking on. How long do you run that? I know that all depends on traffic too. So
it does it by number of visitors. The basic plan limits you to 1,000. I have consistently found that's enough to get a clear answer.
Makes sense.
And one of the nice things about the basic plan is it doesn't use 100% of your traffic. So it stretches it out over a longer time. And I think that could get you a more statistically significant result.
It gets you a better sample.
Yes.
Maybe you had a spike in traffic one day because of one thing, sale or an ad you ran, then all those visitors may be pretty similar. But if it spreads it out, it's going to be a better sample.
Yeah. So, but if you're like if you can look at the heat map and go, I think this is something's weird here. There's no harm in just rerunning it. So the answer is it's not by time, it's by number of visitors. So minimum I want is 1,000, 2,000. Obviously, like more is better, but it depends on the plan you're on and how much traffic you get to the site.
Makes sense.
Scroll map generally, there's a little more intuition there. I generally want to see that like, if you want to know if a page is too long, and too long could mean like they lost interest in it and bounced, or they get to the thing that a majority of people want and they click through to the next page before they ever get to the bottom of the page. That means, all right, the thing's unnecessarily long, so it's got excess load time for no reason. I just look to see if approximately 75%, 3 to 4 people make it to the end if they get to the footer. And then we know, okay, this page is as long as it needs to be. And that's one where it gets a little tough. It's like, half of people bounced or 75% only made it 25% of the way down the page. All right, this tells me there's either an issue or there's an element that that the majority of people are clicking on. So the page doesn't need to be longer, but that's where it gets a little tougher.
Is it that all their questions are answered and they're convinced after 25%, so they're ready to go? Or is it
could be good or bad? That's the tough part. So that one's going to be like pretty subjective, where case by case basis. But just use that benchmark. Like, did 3 out of 4 people make it to the footer? Okay, great. If not, we got to start questioning what's going on here. Or if you have like 99% of people make it to the footer, that could tell you like there's something that there's missing that they expect to be there that's not.
A lot of people didn't get their question answered or didn't find enough info because if everybody's going, because a lot of people, I'm one of those that my questions are answered usually pretty quickly, so I may not scroll all the way to the bottom of the page. I'll make quick decisions on some things. So if everybody's scrolling to the bottom, then probably your page doesn't have enough info. I love that. That makes sense.
All right. Here's my last one, because this testing does not need to be that tough. Well, and I guess I could tell you about split testing briefly. All right. The next one is user testing. So Hotjar will let you do screen recording, which is cool. But I want to take it a step further. Like, I have trouble with watching screen recordings because they're so out of context. I think it.
You don't know what the person is thinking, right? Are they talking through what they're doing, or you just get to watch?
No, you just watch them click around the site.
Why they're doing
it's very weird. I don't find I'll watch a few, but it's not a thing I get a ton of insights out of. And check it out. You can run it on your site in the basic plan with Hotjar, and try and watch like 3 to 5 of them. And you'll see how people are using the site. So that could be helpful. Do it last once you know how kind of the heat map and scroll maps are looking. But because this is it's so divorced where it's just, you're watching a mouse step around a browser, it's weird. I got a different way. I got this one from, it's way cooler. This is if you're hardcore about how good your site needs to be. Josh Frank from Testing Triggers told me he goes to coffee shops. So we'll assume Starbucks. Yep. He buys a stack of gift cards. So he buys like $10 gift cards for $100. Then he hangs out in that gift shop or in that cafe and talks to people and goes, "Hey, here's a $10 gift card. I want you to have it. I'm a web designer and I just need you to watch you try to purchase something from my website. It'll take you 90 seconds. And that's awesome. And a lot of people, some people be like, "Oh, no, thank you." But most people are like, "Oh, that's really cool." And so they'll go along with it. So now you get to watch a stranger try and purchase something cold from your website, probably on their phone. I guess you could bring a laptop with, or hassle people who have laptops in the cafe. But then also ask them questions like, "Hey, why did you don't want to interrupt them, but you could be like, "Hey, why'd you think that worked that way?" Or what did you think? Or they're like, "Oh, that," if they go, "That's weird," you could say, "Well, what did you think would happen?" So it's a really, really interesting way to do it. I understand that might be intimidating for some people. So
other comfort zone, but man, I love that face to face and live, and that discussion you have. You're going to get unique answers and a unique experience if you do it that way. And again, probably you don't have to do a ton of those, but if you get a handful. I don't know, did your buddy talk about how many of those he tries to do to get some clear insights?
You try to get 5 to 10. Yeah. And the advantage is you get to talk to people that way. But all right, let's say that spooks you out. Here's the other easy way. At your next family gathering, have your extended family do it. So the people who don't really know what you do, already you're picturing someone, have them do it. So okay, they're family, they're obligated to do it. It takes the pressure off you, but you still get that experience of someone who's relatively unfamiliar with your site tries to make a purchase for the first time. And that's what you need, is those that very first time reactions. Because the moment they've gone through it once, okay, now they're already starting to figure out and work around any weird pain points, friction, jankiness that the site has.
So the advantage of that too is you're going to be, some of your family members probably are not that technically savvy. So you can watch how do they go through this shopping process. And that's a good indicator of what is the general consumer gonna how are they gonna behave? Are they gonna get stuck on certain elements, or is it gonna be smooth for them? I think you'd said one time that you want to design your site so that a drunk somebody.
I want a crazy lazy drunk can work through the site.
I love that.
I want something like I want somebody. Assume they're a narcissist. Like one of the common mistakes we say is all the copy is written like first person about the entrepreneur, about the merchant, and like when I'm just a stranger on a website and you're looking for my money, I don't care about you. I care about me, right? So you want to make sure you've got that you focus language to answer that narcissism. Was where the crazy part of crazy lazy drunk came from.
Crazy lazy drunk. You probably have one of those in your family. You can just have them shop your site, get their feedback, and you're ready to rock. So, okay, this has been phenomenal. Very, very actionable and helpful. So what about then split testing? So that probably comes way down the road, not right for everybody, but just give your tips and insight on if you choose to split test, how do you do it?
So if you went through everything we discussed, now your site is in a significantly better place than it was. And there's a lot of things where you're like, I'm sure that like forehead slappers where you're like, oh yeah, I meant to fix that 2 years ago, never got around to it. So you've got all those issues fixed. But there's some things where you're like, I've got some ideas on how to improve this, but I'm not sure what impact it'll have. Okay, now it's time to do split testing. The best tool, I think, is Google Optimize. So number one, it's free. It's so easy to set up. It's deceptively simple. I spent like 2 days screwing around with it because it was already set up like correctly, and I was just trying to wildly overcomplicate it. So the magic of Google Optimize is it uses if you've got Google Analytics running on your site with enhanced e-commerce, which if you're on Shopify, you already do. Getting Google Optimize to run on top of that is incredibly simple. So then you can set up split tests with it. And know decisively, like, okay, when we did this version of the page, conversions went up 40%. But Google Optimize, easy and free, so try that first, and try make sure it's like very statistically significant when you're looking at these tests, and try not to go crazy with it. Like most people can only support one test at a time. And make it like an A/B test. Like, just don't overcomplicate it and end up, creating all kinds of statistical issues for yourself.
Totally makes sense. And we were talking, offline about looking for, where can you get the most leverage? You look for those areas where we can make these relatively small changes that have the biggest impact. And I think that's exactly what you identify with the survey process, the heat map, the scroll map, and those in-person kind of dry runs, which is awesome. So I think that's phenomenal, really, really good content. I will also say, and we don't really have time to dig into it now, but I love the episode on your podcast that you and Paul did on building the perfect product detail page. So in fact, let's take like 30 seconds. So quick teaser for that episode. Why should people watch that episode other than the obvious perfect product detail page? Why should they watch that or listen to that?
So I will tell you based on successful examples working with clients, we lay out these are the elements you need for a successful product page based on experience. But number one, oh my gosh, treat your product description as a sales letter, and lead with make it longer than you think it needs to be. Use the Amazon style, and then use a sales letter format where the description you talk about the pain that the product is for. Paint a picture of the world that this product creates, and then introduce, okay, well, here's the technical features of the product. So very benefit focused. And again, that's copywriting. Anybody could do it. You don't have to have a designer or developer help you with that, and it can have an incredible impact on add to cart rate.
But that's something that so many people skip. Like, people skip
because it feels like homework.
What's that?
It feels like homework.
It does feel like homework. It feels like you're writing paper, like you're back in English class or something. But it's so important to get that emotional peel right, and to zero in on the right benefits, and then yes, get to the technical things as well. But we forget, or we assume people know what we know, or we assume that the picture is going to do all of the selling for us. And certainly images are immensely important in e-commerce, but a lot of people skip the copy, or they shortchange, or they don't put effort into it, and that can be a huge benefit. So on that episode, you kind of break down some really great product detail pages for you to go check out and look at. And so highly recommend that episode. We'll link to it in the show notes on this show as well. So Kurt, what if people are listening and they think, dude, that process, that sounds amazing. I need to go through that process, but I don't want to do that myself. So they could also hire you guys potentially to run that process for them, correct?
Absolutely. We do it fixed price, fixed scope. So there's no hourly billing. You know what you're paying up front. Check out ethercycle.com. Ether like Ethernet, cycle like bicycle.
Ethercycle.com. Check it out. My man, Kurt Elster, we've sent clients his way, does phenomenal work. If it's a good fit for you, highly recommend you check it out. And check out the Unofficial Shopify Podcast. It's amazing. You'll fall in love with it as I have. Kurt, man, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate you coming on, and we'll have to do this again sometime.
Thanks for having me.
All right, man. Talk to you soon. And as always, thank you for tuning in. Let us know what you'd like to hear more of. We love your show ideas, topic ideas. And with that, until next time, thank you for listening.